So,
If
everybody's ready, I will call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Director Martin?
Here.
Director Sewell?
Here.
Director Grasha?
Here.
Vice President Duncan?
Here.
President Wright?
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum. Okay, give me just a moment, please.
Okay, thanks, bud.
Okay, Nancy.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3, public input. Would anybody in the public out there like to speak on items that are not on our agenda today?
I did not get any requests for items not on the agenda. We do have 2 public comments relating to districting.
Okay, thank you. Then we will go on to item number 4, which is review and input and public input for draft maps for a transition to elections by division. This is time and place to fix and solicit the public input in respect to Mission Springs Water District, making having a review and public input on draft maps for a transition to election by division. This public hearing will be declared open. I will open the public hearing and staff will give their report. I will then call for comments from the public. During this time, there will be no back and forth conversation between the public and the board and staff. All questions will be noted and will be addressed after all public comments have been received. The public hearing will then be closed and the board will have discussion and then we will I'll close the public hearing at that time. So public hearing is open. We'll start with the secretary's report, please.
Notice of public hearing was posted to the Desert Sun newspaper on June 13th, 2020. Hearing notice was also posted on the board outside the Mission Springs Water District offices and on the Mission Springs Water District website. I have one comment to read aloud regarding districting.
Okay, thank you. Staff report, Victoria.
Thank you, Dory. Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. Just going quickly over the staff report regarding these 3 draft maps that we have. As you know, this is public hearing number 3 of the process to transition to a by-division election system. As you know or recall, back in March of 2019, the Board of Directors passed a resolution of intention in order to initiate the procedure to establish and implement an election by division system. The first 2 hearings that we had were held in January and February, and at those meetings there were no draft maps presented. It was to collect public feedback or comment in order to help our demographer David Ely composite these maps along with the demographic data. The 3 draft maps that you have were posted or made available for public review starting June 4th, which exceeds the minimum 7-day requirement according to Election Code 110. And so I will hand things over to our demographer, David Ely, to go through these 3 draft maps, which are also available for those on the public at mswd.org/districting.
We also have those maps available to pull up today. David, you let me know when you're ready.
Okay, I'll do just a brief discussion of what went into them before we look at the maps. I listened to what was said primarily by board members and have driven extensively around the jurisdiction and looked at a lot of socioeconomic data and things like that. In creating these drafts, I've used all that kind of input and standard redistricting criteria, trying to make the districts as recognizable as possible and to try and keep like communities together as much as possible. In addition, we have here, because there is a significant Latino population in the jurisdiction, I determined that it was possible to have 2 districts in which there is a Latino citizen majority without having to do anything out of the ordinary in order to accomplish that. So all of my drafts have those. If we did not have districts with two districts with Latino citizen voting age majority, it would make the district vulnerable to a federal Voting Rights Act lawsuit. There would be a lot more that would need to go into it than just that fact, but that fact would be relevant. So basically, why don't you go ahead and bring up the demographic for the first draft. All right. What you can see on this chart is the total population and the breakdown into Latino, White, Black, and Asian, and then the same for the voting age population and for the citizen voting age population. The second line on this chart, which is deviation, means deviation from the ideal population. The ideal population is just the total population of the district divided by 5. And we're basically allowed a difference of about 10% from the lowest district to the highest district in terms of population. And so with draft 1, we've got district 1 is 3.6% under, district 3 is 3.4% over. So it's about 7% total. So it's well within the 10% that we're allowed. If you look down at the bottom, we're showing the breakdown of the citizen voting age population, and you can see that districts 4 and 5 have a Latino majority, as I discussed. All 3 drafts have basically these same characteristics. Much of the configuration of the districts in all 3 drafts is the same, but I wanted to go in detail on one of the charts. So you go ahead and show the map for draft 1. You can see a very large district 1, which basically has everything to the west of what's labeled as Indian Canyon or Indian Avenue. And then the other 4 districts are all completely to the east of that, and District 1 also has some territory east of that in order to get equal population districts. That characteristic is the same in all 3 drafts. Another characteristic that's there in all 3 drafts really is that District 3 has most of the eastern end of the district. And then there are 3 districts in the center that are configured differently in the 3 drafts. The details are somewhat different. So in this draft, we have District 2, and I'm going to look at the map on my screen, which has a little more detail. Basically, you've got 16th Street and I guess is it Mission Hills, Mission something.
Lakes.
Yeah, that basically makes the northern boundary of District 2. We include both sides of, excuse me a second. Yeah, Mission Lakes. Both sides of Mission Lakes are included in District 2. And then the area goes up to Santa Cruz Road to form the northern boundary. The eastern and western boundaries of the district are basically Little Morongo Road on the west and Verbena on the east. And then Pearson makes southern boundary on the eastern portion of this district. District 4 is primarily located between Pearson and 14th. And then the area south of 14th is in District 5. Verbena is the division in general, but in the southern portion of District 5, it comes over to Mountain View on the southern edge. So that is basically what draft 1 looks like. Unless you have questions for me, we'll move to draft 2.
You want the demographics first?
I don't think we need to look at the demographics. The overall characteristics are pretty much the same in all 3 drafts. So if people have questions about the demographics, we can do that, but I don't think we need to go over them in detail. So with draft 2, we've got the same basic characteristics as I talked about with draft 1. The lines are a little bit simpler and straighter in draft 2 than they are in draft 1. But I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing because of how some of the connections are made. But basically, Verbena is more of a solid boundary between District 3 and the other 3 districts. Although, again, District 5 comes a little bit to the east of it at the southern end. And so we have the same basic things with lakes, including both sides of the street for portions of it. And then Pearson and 14th forming the major boundaries that separate the other districts. And I think we can go on to draft 3. In draft 3, we have a different kind of configuration in that instead of having districts 2, 4, and 5 in the center, here we have 4 and 5 roughly in the same general shape as they were in the other 2 drafts. But District 2 has now moved north to take basically everything north of 10th Avenue, and then another section coming down to, I don't remember what it came down to. It comes down to 6th Street. So on, against Verbena. And so, yeah, districts 4 and 5 are roughly the same. District 3 is roughly the same, but District 1 and 2 have switched population. So a lot of the area that was in District 2 in the other drafts here is in District 1, and then District 2 has all of the area farther to the north. So that's pretty much what the 3 drafts are. I think all of them meet all of the legal requirements, and that they make sense from the way that the communities are laid out and what I know, at least, of the jurisdiction. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them, but otherwise that's it.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll have public comments. Dory, do you want to read that one first or afterwards, or what?
I'll go ahead and read it now. So this public comment was provided by Susan Werner. She resides on Avenida Ladera. Depending on what map you're looking at, it falls in between District 1 and District 2. She states, I would like to provide some input on the drafted maps for the new districts. I looked at all 3 options online. I live on Avenida Ladera, so I'm mostly familiar with the northwest area of the city. I'm also fairly new resident of the city, only having been living here since late last fall. I hope I can carve out time to call into the meeting scheduled for June 16th. I like option 3 purely because of the north area of Mission Lakes Boulevard and east of Indian Canyon are separated from the far west sides of the area, west of Indian Canyon. I think water concerns and maintenance are much different for those living in Mission Lakes Country Club and other neighborhoods as compared to the areas that are less densely populated. I also think the population deviations of option 3 as compared to the ideal numbers provided in the demographics section of this document, and she references the original PowerPoint, seem to be the best of all 3 options. No one district seems to be too far of an outlier. And that concludes her comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, who else do we have?
Russ Betts indicated he would like to make public comment. Go ahead, Russ. Yes.
Great, thank you. I had a little bit of concern on this one, so I'm delving into another agency's business a little bit here, but I guess I'm coming to you as a ratepayer and a customer at MSWD. I understood this process gets COVID-19 and was halted.
Russ, you're kind of breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me okay?
That's a little better, yeah.
Okay. How's it working now? Are you all right?
Well, keep
It's a little
talking.
scratchy, but keep going.
All right. I understood this process started pre-COVID-19 and they got halted because, well, everything got halted. And it seemed up rather abruptly without a lot of public input, and basically, to me, seems to be short-circuiting the public hearing process. For whatever reason, it appears to be a matter of beat the clock, trying to get this in just under the wire ahead of the deadline to put it forward for the next election. I think something like this needs a much more serious look, and I don't see the need for rushing this one as you appear to be doing. And just picking it up on a short notice because apparently the governor said you could all go ahead and do it now. So I really think you need to take a close look at that question. Is there proper public input? Even now, it's very difficult for the public to participate. I hope you can hear me through this connection. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've heard you. We've heard you.
Okay, good. I'll try and wrap this up. And then the other thing is I look at the maps, and the current concern always comes up during this is, are the existing directors carving out districts that are convenient and suitable to them? And if you look at maps 1 and 2, you see that, if you can see a line that follows Mission Lakes Boulevard, and it goes very straight line, and then all of a sudden it gets to West Drive, and it takes a dog leg, a little turn, goes 1 block north, then it goes 1 block east, and then comes back down to Mission Lakes Boulevard and continues on straight. And that would appear to be that for some reason you've carved out something for one director to be included in a different district, so perhaps not competing with another director. And that's always the concern when people are looking at these maps, is that type of stuff going on. That shouldn't be going on. I can't think that there would be any specific demographics that would be wildly impacted by making that little jog in the map as you have on maps 1 and 2, and you've got your demographer here so he can tell you, but I'd be really surprised if he says, oh man, the whole plan gets thrown out if I don't make that little jog there. So the logical line would be to follow a straight line instead of gerrymandering along Mission Lakes Boulevard. So those would be my 2 comments. I continue to applaud Mission Springs Water District for making your meetings so accessible now. For those of us that have gotten used to doing Zoom, But I want to repeat that this is really shouldn't be a stand-in for what will be a normal public hearing process during an issue that's so important as this. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other, we'll answer the questions after we get all the questions done. Is there anybody else, Dory? No, nobody.
No.
Okay, nobody else at this time. So, okay, does the demographer have any comments to the comments that Russ made, or right? Is that what we're doing now? We're doing questions to the comments.
I can respond briefly.
Okay.
I did a rough draft of all of these drafts without any input from anybody and without knowing anything about where any of the board members lived. After having done that, I did look at where the board members lived, and to the extent that extremely minor changes could be made to the boundaries in order to allow the current board members to run again in separate areas. The boundaries were moved slightly. There were no more than a couple hundred people total affected by any of these changes. And so it's well within what's normally done to accommodate sitting board members. The plan itself was designed completely independent of those locations, and the only changes that were made were extremely minor. And so that's perfectly common practice here.
Okay, thank you. So if that was the only question and the only comment, Grace, do you have anything to say at this time before I close the public hearing?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
So as far as this is concerned, so when it comes to special districts, and anyone going through the CVRA process for the first time, they're allowed to consider incumbency in that. Now, for cities that are going to do redistricting later, that's different, but that doesn't apply to special districts. So it is something that legally is allowed to be considered. But like the demographer stated, the majority of the maps, the overall design was done without knowledge of where anybody lived. And then that's it for now. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. So hearing no more comments or questions are out there, then I will close the public hearing. And does the board have any discussion or comments or questions at this time? Yes, Director Gracia.
I'll try to go easy here. I had a great plan to have fun with this question, but I'll try to keep people out of it. And this would be for a lawyer, I think, any one of them. Switching to elections by division will change, certainly adding the divisional lines. What happens if, for instance, can an elector from another division, and I'm not suggesting this will happen, I'm just curious because of my curiosity about everything, so don't anybody get freaked out here. Will an elector within any of the 5 districts be able to sign a recall petition? And believe me, this is just against another director in another district, or does those signatures would they need to be gathered within only electors within the division of the director being recalled? And again, I'll say, this is not directed at anyone. It's just a curiosity. I'm trying to figure out how the law changes on that subject because we're all still one district.
Sure. I can address that.
You're good.
So I'll need to double check on that once we move to divisions, but to keep in mind for right now, all of you were elected at large, and until members are elected in a division, nothing would change. So from this point, even after the ordinance passes until November, when a new board member were to take over, everything would stay the same. Generally, things do change, and it requires districts to sign on. For instance, collecting signatures to get on the ballot, you would get it from your district. So I'll check on it, but my guess is that it'll likely go that way.
You get the signatures from the division, not from the district. Is that what you meant? Right.
Yes,
okay.
by the division, sorry.
So
I know we use different terms for the cities.
Right. Okay. So like in your case, you get them within the first, you in the fifth or first, I forget.
The
Okay.
first.
Right. And okay, that's a good number. So, okay, so you answered that both ways. And that would be an interesting question to look into. I think you would have to just get signatures within the division, but there wasn't a quick answer to that through Google.
Yeah, and that's likely, but I'm going to double check on that,
Yeah,
just to
good.
make sure.
Also, I will say that, this came as a surprise, and when you've run for office as many times as I have, you develop some strange friendships. So I called the registrar of voters to see if you can get this in under the wire on the first, I think. The question that I had what I was mixed up about on item 14 and 15 yesterday was about this subject in terms of we voted. I thought it was on the agenda yesterday, but apparently it was on the agenda from the month prior, and that was to establish the election. And we've already called as a board, and again, this is not me challenging anything, it's just a curiosity. We've already filed as a board for an election within the district, but not by division. And I don't know if when this goes in, I guess it nullifies that, but that'll have to be undone and then passed again, I guess, on the 24th or at the next meeting. It seemed like that might be a holdup. Also, my concern was that I was able to find out and settle a curiosity. They promised that they would have the maps and the databases prepared on the same day that we pass this. So if we pass this on the 24th and we get it in on a deadline, we will be able to have access to the county's database in terms of who will be electors within each division. And that's a big deal because people in these new divisions are going to need to have adequate time to adjust their lives to potentially becoming candidates. You're going to have a whole slew of people coming out of these 3 divisions that are going to become available. And we need to be able to make sure, either as a district or community people involved in the community, to get out and make people aware that there are going to be 3 brand new directors elected, potentially from divisions. And I don't know if that works to the advantage or disadvantage of any incumbent, but since you're moving forward with this so hard and so fast, I think it's important, it's incumbent upon us to make sure the public knows what's going on so that they know that they can now engage in their water district's governance in a more direct way. And I think that that's going to have dramatic improvements to our district's leadership if they do get involved in that. So I applaud the district for moving forward with this and look forward to making sure that every citizen in this district learns between the day that this is passed and the day of the opening of filing period between the 13th of July and the date in August when it closes, that they can jump into this race and possibly find themselves sitting on this board in December.
Okay, thank you. Any other directors? Oh, first of all, you had a question about item number 11 that was on our agenda yesterday that we pulled. We didn't we didn't do it. Would somebody like to answer that question about that?
Go ahead, John.
Okay, so the item that was up before the board yesterday was a resolution of the board of directors declaring offices to be filled by the next general election. And so that just, recognized the fact that 3 members of the board would be up for election at the general election on November 3rd. And then the action item in that resolution was that there'd be notice of the general election, and it was approved for submission to the registrar of voter, and that the cost of the candidate statements for the office of Director of Mission Springs Water District would be borne by the candidate. So I don't know that would be I don't think that would be a problem if you.
Well, we pulled that item. We
Yeah.
pulled that yesterday.
Okay.
And
And
so,
that's,
We could add divisions and do it after the 24th public hearing if it so passes.
Yes,
So that we could add that to it, right? Yeah, that's what it was, yes.
that's on the agenda.
So that'll be on next month's agenda, right?
No, it'll be on
The
next
24th.
week's agenda.
Oh, on the 24th, okay.
Yeah,
Correct.
the other thing is, just a reminder that we are going to have another public hearing on the 24th on this subject, so.
Well, okay. Might have to have it without me, but that's okay. Okay, so any other questions from the board or comments? Okay,
Can I,
we don't have a
Nancy?
vote today, so. is that the
go ahead,
end of
Grace.
the public hearing?
Yeah, Nancy, I do want to just discuss this a little bit more. So keep in mind that we're going to have another public hearing on June 24th to discuss this matter. But in order for us to be able to adopt the ordinance on June 24th, that means that we have to have decided on a map. So it'll be really important right now to get comments generally from board members about which map you like, if there are any changes to maps, because if we need to make any changes, our demographer needs to do that tonight in order for us to submit those to the public so that they can provide any further comment at the June 24th meeting. So it would be helpful to the demographer, and I think to all of us, if we could have some general ideas of whether or not these maps are acceptable to people, or if there's any concern about making changes, because even a minor change needs to be held open for another 7 days.
Okay, Steve?
is it against the rules to perhaps hold another meeting in between this meeting and the one on the 24th? Because I'm sure that as this goes forward in this expedited way, that people might have questions. Could we meet again on this before the 24th and not mess up what we're doing? Because just like you just said, and I don't have a favorite map. I see what you did there, and I'm okay with it either way. I don't mind. All 3 of them are good to me personally, so I don't want to, but I'm certain that there's going to be a slew of questions that are going to come up between now and the 24th. I know they roll around in my head all the time. So if we could set another meeting between now and then on this subject, another special meeting, just so that we can get those answers that you just talked about. So that's all I have to say. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. I can see it, but I can also see a bunch of thoughts that might want to be detailed and gotten to. I'm sure Ivan's got some ideas.
Sure. So that would be a decision for the board to make. If you wanted to do that, you could hold another meeting. We need to decide today for sure. But also, just Director Grasha, if you did have questions that I could answer, I could also answer in the interim, and happy to put that on the public record, my answers to you as well. So that's another option. But
Okay.
but whatever pleases the directors.
Okay, anybody else have any comments? Okay, Russ.
Yeah, in reviewing the three maps. My preference would be map 2 because the division seems to have more geometric, simple boundaries that are using mostly main thoroughfares to separate the divisions, and I think it would be less confusing to the public to have map 2. So that would be my preference.
Okay, Randy, have any preferences?
No, not really, but I do like Russ's idea of the simple boundaries rather than, jig-jogging all over the place. Like to.
Ivan?
I was just going to say I appreciated the public comments, and I know possibly a way to get more public input in this short time frame would be maybe making some kind of social media post to encourage questions to be submitted. Whether they could meet it at the actual meeting or not, they could still submit questions and maybe even get answered before the next meeting. In regards to the maps, I'm pretty much open to all of them, but I did like the comment that was made about map 3. The area of Mission Lakes is more similar to those other areas above Mission Lakes Boulevard to the east. But again, I'm up to either map.
Okay, my choice would be 1, but 2 is okay too. As far as Mission Lakes, going down Pearson, with what's that called? A Skyborn. As soon as that develops, these lines are going to change because there's going to be a lot of homes down there. But anyway, I'm thinking Mission Lakes Boulevard or Mission Lakes Country Club is in the county, so it matches all the rest over here in the county to the west of it. And it's also Hewitt's territory, which is also to the west of Mission Lakes Boulevard versus Perez's. So I think I'm either okay with 1 or 2. They're pretty similar. There's not a whole lot of difference in them. Just that jagging, and if you guys think that straight lines are easier for people, I would be okay with 2. I'd like 1 or 2 personally. 1's my favorite, but I would go with 2. That's so. Okay, Ivan. Here you see.
Another thing you made me realize is too the 2020 census before the election in 2022. I'm sure these will be adjusted, and maybe David could speak on that as far as what that process would be in the next year or 2.
So I can actually answer that. So with redistricting for the water district, it's a little bit different than it is for cities. You only need to have 1 public hearing, but you do need to look at that. So in 2021, once the new data comes out, then you'll need to review it and adjust. It's possible that you won't adjust anything, but if the population varies, then you'll need to, or if you just get a lot of public input that says, things need to be different, then you can do that as well. But you don't have to go through the more arduous process that cities go through. That might change in the future, but so far, special districts are treated a little bit differently. And I don't know if David, do you have anything else to add?
No, not really. It's just the main thing is that if the populations of the districts have a deviation that's outside of the 10%, then it will have to be redrawn. If it's less than the 10%, then it's at your discretion whether or not you want to redraw them.
Okay, thank you. I would think as soon as Skyborn starts going in between there's gets a lot of homes in there. That'll definitely be when things will have to change. Steve, you had your hand up.
Yes. Let's say next year or 2 years from now, the next election, next cycle, there's a change. There's a change is decided to happen, and I'm thinking more universally here. Other districts as well as our own, that would cause a section or a neighborhood to be moved from one division to the other. Is it legal to disenfranchise voters completely from the process? Let's say, for instance, in my case, where I live, I won't be able to vote in this coming election.
Neither will I.
With-
yeah.
Right, right. I'm trying to be careful here not to show my hand, and it not necessarily about Mission Springs. After this election cycle, what happens if the board decides we're going to move Steve's house to another district? Therefore, now I haven't been able to vote in this cycle or the next cycle. Are you following me there? Because I'm trying not to out.
Well, the next cycle, you would be up for reelection. So
Right, and I'm trying to use myself as an example, but I'm thinking.
Can respond.
I think I understand.
Okay, try an answer, and then I'll tell you whether it's.
Sure. So what I think you're getting at is that because, for instance, like you said, you as an example, we will be possibly adjusting the lines of the divisions prior to when your election will take place. And what happens if the division lines move and your district, your division is not up for election in that cycle, because your house is moved into a different division. That is something that could happen, but I don't think that's likely because unlike with cities, especially the water district is allowed to take into consideration incumbents' homes. So I don't think that's as great of a concern. If we were in a city and the city had been undergoing rapid changes, then that's more likely to happen because cities that are redistricting are not allowed to look at incumbency anymore. In this case, it would be able to be under consideration. I just don't see that as necessarily a likely outcome that will happen. Obviously, I can't read the future. We'd have to look at the way the city is changing, but that seems unlikely.
Okay.
Can I
Go ahead.
David?
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, actually, in any jurisdiction where you have people voting in alternate cycles, when the districts are redrawn between there's almost certainly, if there's any significant changes at all, there's almost certainly going to be people who go through election cycles without being able to vote. So they'll have their vote delayed for 2 years by the changes. And then there will be other people who get to vote again in 2 years after having voted this year. But that's something that's just part of what happens when you draw districts where you have a staggered election scheme. And
Okay. Now,
we try to minimize it, but it does happen.
all right. So let's take it another step. Let's say that the district is purposefully drawing lines to keep particular individuals from being able to seek office within that district, and that's more what I'm thinking. And maybe you could answer that. Typically, a voter might not even notice that he's been moved around, but somebody that may be looking to run for office that might. Can you draw a guy out of a race 2 cycles in a row?
Intentionally?
Well, you know, let's say it's obvious that that's what's happening. Do you have to really have emails telling the lawyer to tell the demographer to do a particular shady business? Because I think, and I'm not talking about anyone here specifically, but maybe within earshot, I can see that almost happening.
That is not something that I would condone in any way. John, I think probably is the better person to speak to that.
Okay.
John, if you want to.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see. I just don't see. We'll see. I think we're going to hear about this issue again before before too many moons. We'll put it that way.
Okay, I think we've all spoken. So Grace, what do you need us to do?
I don't need you to do anything else. I just wanted to make sure that you all kind of heard each other's thoughts before we move to the next public hearing. That way, now that you have a sense of where everyone is, you can take a look at the maps again. You'll obviously, hopefully have more public comments on June 24th that you'll take into consideration as well. And then you can kind of get a sense of what looks good to you. I will just want to point out that on June 24th at that meeting, we are going to the ordinance is available now for the public to see. And if there are no changes to any of the maps and you are able to come to agreement on which map you'd like to pass, then the ordinance can be voted on, and we can move forward with the process. If there are changes to any of the maps, even if it's very minor, the maps will have to be held open for another 7 days, and you'll have to meet again in order to pass the ordinance. So just want you to keep that in mind. I actually do want to mention Director Grash's point though about outreach. Once we do finish this, it is going to be important for the district to do outreach to the community about this, because it does get a little bit confusing initially. So the first election, it's pretty important to do that outreach.
Russ?
Yeah, just for clarification, at the beginning of the meeting, I understood Grace to say that that we had to select a map today for moving forward. Did I misunderstand what she was saying? I thought we had to select a map today.
No, you don't need to select a map today. In fact, you can't, because the public hearing another public hearing still needs to happen. I just wanted you to get a sense of what you all are thinking, because if we needed to make changes, that had to be done today.
Okay.
But since you all seem to be.
So the next meeting on the 24th, we will have to select a map. Is that correct?
Well, you don't have to. If the board was not ready, you wouldn't have to. But if you want to pass the ordinance and move forward with the process, then yes, you would choose a map and pass the ordinance.
Well, that's a given that if we decide we're not going to continue with the process, then we wouldn't have to select a map. But if we're going to continue and move to districting, the next meeting on the 24th, we'll have to select a map, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
So if you have changes that you want to propose, today is the time to do it. If you want to have the districting finalized for the November election, if you wait until the next meeting to make changes, as Grace indicated, there would have to be 7 days after that meeting before you had another public meeting to approve a map. So today is the day would be a good day to make changes if you're going to make changes to any of the existing maps as proposed.
Okay, Russ still has his hand up, and then I'll go to Steve.
Yeah.
Russ?
Since we may have to revisit this again once the census is out on there, I don't know that it would be necessary from my standpoint to make any changes in the district, since we may have to do that anyway once the census comes out. So I don't see the point in making those changes now.
Thank you. Steve?
If we have it on the 24th, we can choose a map that night and still have time. But it sounded like you wanted us to choose a map tonight. And if we did that, what would be the point of, other than having the meeting by statute, why would we even bother having another meeting?
No. I don't want anybody to choose a map tonight.
Okay.
I just wanted you to talk about the maps so that if changes needed to be made,
all right.
we could make changes.
All right.
No.
We've got the 7-day notice.
Okay.
Yes, you must hold a second hearing.
Right. Well, that's what I thought. And then it was like, I thought I was hearing you tell me to pick a map. And I'm like, I want to argue about the maps, but I don't want to do it tonight. It's obvious what's happening here. So let's save those daggers for the 24th. That's going to be a fun meeting. And
So do you want any boundaries? Are you, so you don't, at this point, Steve, you're not asking for any boundaries?
I'm not. I just, I want to.
That's all today is about. So that's fine. So on the 24th, I sure wish we could change that to the afternoon of the 25th, you guys. But My choice. Sorry. Anyway, okay, I already said my piece. I'm okay with the way they're drawn, is that's what you need for us to say today. I don't see any reason either to have any more boundaries changed. Sounds like David's done a good job. Looks like he's done a good job. And I found it very interesting that before he even knew where we were, that the map was very identical to what it ended up being when he finally found out where we all lived. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So shows that we're right on, I think. Okay, where's the agenda? So if we're any other questions or comments on that topic? We don't have any public, do we? No. Okay, so we'll go on to the general manager's comments.
I don't think I have anything.
Nothing since
So,
yesterday.
Yeah, nothing since yesterday.
Okay, directors, any of you guys have any comments? I see a no and a no and a no, and Steve, you're just sitting there looking at me. Would you like to make a comment, Steve? Okay, no. Okay, so Grace, are you done then? Everything?
I am done. I'll see you on the 24th.
Okay, then I will adjourn this meeting.